Come to the back. Don, they gotta come. They gotta come. Come on.
Come on.
The panic was real, and it all happened in seconds. A gunman rammed his truck into a Michigan church packed with children and then opened fire. But what could have been a massacre was stopped by fast action and extraordinary bravery. We are going to break down the chaos, the heroism, the chilling details that investigators uncovered with this shooting, and we're going to do it right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. At just a little past 11 in the morning on June 22nd, the Wayne Police Department in Michigan received the first of multiple 911 calls, and the reports were chilling. An active shooter was attacking CrossPointe Community Church. This is a large house of worship on Wayne's Glenwood Road. And what unfolded over the next few minutes was a scene of terror. It was a scene of quick thinking, and ultimately a scene of heroism that prevented an absolute, complete massacre. We're going to break it all down for you right now. So according to Wayne Police Chief Ryan Strong, the suspect, later identified as Brian Anthony Browning, a 31-year-old man from nearby Romulus, which is about a 10-minute drive from Wayne, pulled into the church parking lot in a Ford F-150. And witnesses said he drove erratically, drawing the attention of church staff. And then he rammed his truck into the building. Strong actually described this harrowing scene as it unfolded during a press conference on June 22nd.
The suspect exited his vehicle wearing a tactical vest, armed with a long gun and a handgun. He approached the church building and began firing his weapon.
Now, inside, about 150 people, many of them children, attended a special summertime vacation Bible school service that were singing, they were clapping, and that was until everything changed in an instant. And what first sounded like construction noise or maybe part of a skit quickly turned into chaos. A live stream of the service actually captured the terrifying moment.
They gotta come. They gotta come. Come on.
You could hear a woman's voice saying, "Please, everybody come to the back," as screams erupted, parents frantically grabbing their children. Some dropped to the floor, others sprinted for the exits. And then an off-camera, rapid gunfire echoed. Wendy Bowden, a church member, told news outlet Click on Detroit that she'd stepped into the lobby to take a phone call when she saw the suspect outside. Now, at first, she thought that he'd simply crashed until the popping sounds made it terrifyingly clear that this was no accident. She ran to the bathroom and hid. She told the outlet, "It was the scariest thing I've ever been involved in. I was hiding in one of the bathrooms and stood on the toilet and shut the door. We didn't know what was going on, but we knew it was bad." All right. So before we get any further into this, I want to bring on a special guest. Let me bring on retired FBI agent, President, CEO of Chronos Investigations, Colin Schmitt. Colin, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming back here on Sidebar.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
This is, you're in the midst of this chaotic scene. It is rapidly unfolding in real time. The confusion is paramount. And you can see on the live stream video, people ducking, moving low, moving towards one side of the church. What do you make of all that?
Well, apparently from the media reports, there was a churchgoer that was outside that saw this happen. And apparently the suspect was dressed in a manner that it appeared that he was ready to have a battle, and he was carrying an AR-15. So after he crashed his truck, the churchgoers engaged him, and then apparently this church had security as well, armed security. So nothing could be described as just quick thinking by the church security as well as the other parishioners to get the people to safety. But good on the individuals that engaged him, stopped him from getting into the church and stopped him from getting access to all those children.
Hey everybody, this is another Law&Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and the research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to all this? Yeah, well, Morgan & Morgan, they're stepping in to fight to hold these food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they're ready to stand up for the families who deserve justice. So if your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, then visit www.forthepeople.com livestream.com/food or scan the QR code on screen to learn more. When you hear people panicking and rushing and grabbing their children, do you have any advice for people that, God forbid, would ever find themselves in a situation like this? First of all, it's hard to know what to make of it. It's kind of hard to believe a shooting is happening at a church. They might think it's part of a skit. They might think it's part of a construction noise. But to appreciate what's going on, do you have any advice for people in an active shooter situation?
Well, the most important advice in an active shooting is to get off the X. Don't sit in a manner or panic and freeze. Move to another location of safety. So it's either fight or flight when you have an active shooter. Either you're going to get off the X and engage him, or you're going to get off the X and run and hide, or run away from the threat. So it appears that everybody did the right thing. They moved and got themselves to a place of safety, and they were engaged. They were paying attention. They weren't just sitting there listening to this thing unfold. From the video, it shows that some people took leadership roles and were directing the people that were inside the church to get to a place of safety.
Is those first 50 seconds the most important? Does it determine whether an active shooter event becomes a mass casualty event, the first 60 seconds, 120 seconds, first minute or so?
Well, I would say the first 10 seconds would be when it determines whether it's a mass casualty event or it's somebody who's engaged and eliminated. And once again, you have to have two things. People have to get off the X, and you got to have somebody that's going to engage the shooter and stop him from harming the people that are in the church.
And you talked about people taking a leadership role, right? The woman who says, please, everybody come to the back. That kind of voice of calm, that kind of leadership in a time of chaos, in an emergency situation is critical, right?
Absolutely. That's when clear thinking and motivation and people moving to a place of safety, it becomes critical, because what happens in a lot of these situations is people freeze and they panic. And then they stay in one place, and then they become just targets of opportunity for that active shooter. And like I said, this was a time where everybody was kind of head on a swivel, and they did the right thing, and they eliminated the shooter, and none of the good guys got hurt.
From your background in the FBI, I'm sure you have spoken to individuals who are witnesses to crimes and something like this. What happens psychologically to people who are a part of this, who witness sudden violence like this?
Well, this is a PTSD event. They're going to have some trauma. Some people will be able to deal with it and it'll move on and it'll be a bad memory. Other people will have psychological, even physiological events. And there'll be people there, maybe even the children, are going to have to get some therapy and talk about this and talk through it, especially the ones who witnessed the shooter being terminated, so to speak.
So as this suspect, again, Mr. Browning, advanced toward the entrance, you had one church member who made a split-second decision. And it turned out to really, I'm not sugarcoating this, to be nothing short of heroic.
Several staff members from the church approached the gunman. A parishioner struck the gunman with his vehicle as the gunman shot the vehicle repeatedly. At least 2 staff members shot the gunman, causing fatal wounds.
One security guard was shot in the leg, but despite that, he kept on fighting. And in the end, Browning was hit by the car, then shot multiple times and died at the scene. Investigators discovered he was armed with an AR-15 style rifle with more than a dozen fully loaded magazines, a semi-automatic handgun, an extended magazine, hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Colin, that is quite the arsenal. What do you take away from that?
Well, and that's intent. I mean, his objective was to kill as many people as he possibly could. When you're showing up with that much firepower, there's only one objective, and that's mass casualty and to kill as many people as possible.
And talk to me about the response here from the staff, the parishioners, their efforts to detain the gunman. You're talking about bravery. I don't know how much more brave it gets than this, and maybe training too.
Well, I think the security staff, it was apparent that they had some training, not necessarily experience with this, but training to what to do. They had firearms training because they put the bullets right on the target and they didn't panic. And training is a function, or being able to respond to a threat is a function of mindset. And mindset is developed through training and repetition. So good on these security guards. They're absolute heroes. And I'm sure if, as they go through this investigation, there were some indicators that this individual wanted to do harm or violence, and there's going to be an after action, obviously, beyond just the incident at the church to find out okay, how can we prevent these from happening in the future?
And you had the security guard who was shot in the leg continued to fight physically, mentally. To be able to do that is something.
Yeah, I make the assumption that he probably had some sort of military training, or he's in the Army or the Marines or some sort of law enforcement, because of his intense attitude to engage the threat and not give up. I mean, he's definitely had a winner's attitude, and that's absolutely what you need when you're engaging a threat.
Yeah, all this coming together, right? Security jumping in, a parishioner taking the vehicle, striking the gunman. When you think about a situation like this, and you talk about a place of worship like this, you tell me, how much are they targets? How much are places of worship targets for a terrorist event, for a mass shooting event? Is this something we see across the country, whether it's an actual event or whether or not there's chatter and it's able to be prevented before something happens?
Well, statistically, you're talking about thousands and thousands of churches. So statistically, this is an absolute anomaly, and it was something that doesn't happen every day or every other day. However, any place that is a mass gathering and you throw a religion in there, somebody who's mentally unhinged or unstable, they're going to try to find a place that's going to have the most impact on the media, and a church would be that place.
Is it important to always have armed personnel or security at these places of worship?
I think it depends on the threat level. The church that my family goes to has security. I could tell that they're wearing concealed weapons, and they're very vigilant, and they're very much paying attention. So it's not a bad idea to have armed security. It also comes down to cost. If you got parishioners who are willing to volunteer to do that at the services, there's no cost to the church. And frankly, the parishioners are going to feel much safer, as well as the security guards who are members of the church. They're going to feel a lot more engaged with their community.
Well, Wayne Police Chief Ryan Strong had high praise for the staff's courage, gave new insight into the possible mindset of this attacker, too.
We are grateful for the heroic actions of the church's staff members, who undoubtedly saved many lives and prevented a large-scale mass shooting. I would add that the church parishioners and staff members were trained in responding to emergency situations, which also saved lives. The gunman is a 31-year-old white male from Romulus. His motivations are unknown, but at this point, it appears he was suffering from a mental health crisis.
So they end up searching Browning's home, and it revealed this disturbing stockpile. You had multiple rifles, handguns, hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He had no criminal record. He had no history of violence, no clear motive. According to police, interviews suggest he had only attended the church a few times with his mother, had no known connections to the congregation. The pastor told the Associated Press that Browning's mother was not a regular member, wasn't there on Sunday. Colin, from an investigative point of view, what do you do now? For me, I think a lot of people were wondering, and this was reported in the news, it happened Sunday morning. You wonder if it's connected to what's happening in the Middle East. There was nothing to suggest that it was. And if that's not the case, how do you make sense of this? From an investigative point of view, how do you get to the bottom of what might have led someone to do this?
Well, the stockpiling is also indicative of long-term intent, because it takes obviously a while to gather all that hardware and all that ammo.
But just to be clear, you mean intent to attack the church, or, hey, maybe we wanted to have protection, or had this warped view of where society was going? It wasn't necessarily to attack the church, right? It might have been something else that had been going on in his life.
The only way you can make that assumption is if he had some sort of digital exhaust in his social media, or he had made a statement to somebody, or there's something out there that indicated his intent. Just the stockpiling shows an intent for violence, in fact, because he had no purpose for having all of that ammunition and all those weapons. So that would be the first thing that law enforcement is going to look at. Okay, when did he start stockpiling this hardware? And they're going to put together a timeline. Then the second step, or along with that, they're going to try to see, okay, who did he talk to? Did he indicate his intent? And was there anybody else that assisted him in doing this? It appears that this is a lone shooter, but law enforcement there is not going to leave any stone unturned.
Is it weird? Is it strange? Is it unique? No criminal history, no history of violence, no known ties really to the church. Is that strange to you?
A little bit. It's not necessarily, something that's going to, make or break the case, because it appears he had a mental breakdown. And that'll be the next step, is they're going to see that there was some sort of indicators. The Secret Service did a very famous study that said like 90% of active shooters have indicators of violence or violent intent prior to the act. And so they're going to look in and see, okay, where did he have this break? What made him snap, so to speak, to engage in this? And most importantly, was there other people that may have assisted him or knew about his intent?
Do you anticipate that there is some sort of mental health history in the sense that, if they're thinking this was a mental health crisis? I mean, I know you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a mental health professional, but in your experience, does someone just snap one day? Or do you believe that this is something that builds up over time? There were signs that were missed, maybe intentionally, inadvertently. Where do you lean on that?
I do agree with you that there was some sort of lead up to this. Based upon my experience, the concept of snapping, there's usually some sort of events that continue to pile on, and then the person is acting in an erratic manner. And just the fact that he was going out and buying all of this hardware or ammunition, and hopefully for the gun store, he wasn't going to the same place to get all this stuff, because that gun store is going to have some hard questions to answer as well on why were they continuing to sell to him in such a short time period.
This might be a juvenile question, but I have to ask, he had to have some sort of training or practice to be able to do this, I would imagine. And if you go to a gun range, do the owners of that gun range, they say, why is he firing those weapons? Or do they look at the behavior of their customers? Because you have to imagine where would someone have the ability to practice with these kinds of weapons?
I mean, it's up to the gun range or gun store to be vigilant. And the ones that I'm aware of they do have a very close relationship with law enforcement, and they do notify law enforcement if they see people who are suspicious that are continuing to come into their range and put a lot of rounds down range and not have a purpose for doing that.
I mentioned the security team. So CrossPointe senior pastor Bobby Kelly Jr. said that the church had formed a security team over a decade ago after similar attacks on houses of worship that were happening nationwide, telling Detroit News, "We're just sitting ducks to someone who wants to come and do harm." Which again, Colin, it goes to what we were talking about before, particularly after this. You wonder if houses of worship are going to be on high alert. You wonder what's going to come of this. The fact that they need security is quite alarming in today's society. But this is something, I guess, that faith-based institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, they have to consider.
Absolutely, and certainly not only on a Christian faith, but the Jewish faith as well, in light of what's going on overseas. They all have to be extremely vigilant because they're targets. Unfortunately, in our society, worldwide, places of worship, whether it be a mosque or a synagogue or a church, are a target. And unfortunately, the congregations are going to have to make some hard choices about putting security out there, whether it be armed or unarmed, so they can keep an eye on the flock, so to speak, to ensure that there's no threats.
And by the way, authorities, they praised the church's response, crediting the staff members, the parishioners, with preventing what, again, could have been a far deadlier outcome.
We were overwhelmed with support from state, local, and federal agencies. Folks are still helping us and answer normal calls for service because we're so overwhelmed. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And again, just one more thank you to the church staff members. I'm telling you right now, their actions prevented dozens of people from being murdered today.
So as police wrapped up their investigation, one thing was clear. Without the bravery of ordinary parishioners and staff, this outcome could have been far worse. Colin, final thoughts on what could have happened? What could we have been talking about today if you didn't have the quick thinking and the quick actions of these individuals?
No security there. You're talking 20, 30, 40 fatalities or casualties until somebody in the church would have engaged him, possibly unarmed, to stop him from doing what he had done. So they were truly heroes, and they stopped a mass casualty event.
And the parishioners, again, quick thinking, trying to get a sense of getting everyone out there, again, taking the car, hitting them. It's just unbelievable. Colin Schmitt, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.